Hello, and welcome to the Banknote Den's presentation of The Many Faces of Money, where we take a look at depictions of world banknotes and present them in short, informative, bite-sized videos. Today, we'll be taking a look at a $5 Union Military Scrip. This is a unique currency that was issued in 1867 to Kansas citizens who incurred damages from what was known as the Price Raid during the Civil War. At the end of the U.S. Civil War, the state of Kansas submitted a petition to the federal government for damages incurred during the conflict. The petition specifically addressed actions resulting from a Confederate excursion that was known as the Price Raid and the Union Army's Indian Expedition under General Samuel R. Curtis. Union General Samuel Curtis oversaw the Department of Kansas and was tasked to defend the western frontier during the Civil War. He was specifically sent to deal with hostile Indians, primarily Cheyenne and Lakota, who were conducting attacks on travelers through their territory. The reasons for the attacks were many, including the spread of disease, devastation of the grasses for grazing, wholesale reduction of timber, and other misuse of lands and nuisances. These attacks were effective and became disruptive to the U.S. government and to companies transporting freight. Eventually, General Curtis was made to conduct an Indian expedition, which enlisted friendly Pawnees to fight against other Indians. Curtis also enlisted what were called galvanized Yankees. These were ex-Confederate soldiers serving in the Union Army to conduct general military operations in the area. As a result of the Indian expedition, the affected Indians attacked more fervently and chose additional targets, causing what was believed to be more damage than if the military had not acted at all. In the meantime, General Curtis was given another issue to deal with, similar in nature, but with a different enemy. By 1864, the Confederate Army found itself without resources. In an attempt to bolster both public support for the South and to gain territory and supplies, a plan was devised to send Confederate Major General Sterling Price into the states of Missouri and Kansas to conduct raids on the Union military. The plan was to retake Missouri, enter Kansas, and scour the land for mules, wagons, and other needed supplies. Leaving in August 1864, Price left with 12,000 men and a small contingent of artillery. During the raids, Price and his men also killed and robbed unarmed civilians and pillaged private properties. Though these actions were not uncommon on both sides of the war, the Price Raid became infamous for its actions and was estimated to have cost over $500,000 in damages. By October 1864, just a mere 2 months after the raid started, the Confederate expedition had confiscated over 500 wagons of supplies, and it seemed as if this was a success. In addition, while it was much less than he had hoped for, it is estimated that as many as 6,000 men joined up with Price while he was in Missouri. Under such a long wagon train, the Confederate march began to slow down. This allowed the Union forces more time to act and to catch up. After the Indian expedition, General Curtis joined up with others to stop the Confederate raids. Combining militias from Kansas and Missouri with several other federal units, The Union forces totaled somewhere around 35,000 men, all of whom were pursuing Price's ever-slowing force of about 18,000. Several battles ensued following Price on his way westward. At first, as the Union forces were just assembling, Price was able to win a few skirmishes and keep the Union army at bay, continuing at his snail's pace. At the Battle of Westport, Missouri, Price was faced with Union soldiers in front and behind his long column. Instead of fleeing to the south, he decided to fight. After several hours, it became apparent that he could not win, and Price retreated back south, towing the 15-mile-long wagon of booty behind him. This line of wagons was acting as an anchor and was the undoing of the Confederates' raid. Passing through the winding Mine Creek area, Price crossed a ford at the head of the line. But about halfway through, the banks softened and the wagons began to bog down, and soon they were stuck hard. Price was oblivious of the situation, and as the Union forces in pursuit of the Battle of Westport were soon upon the stranded Confederates, the rebels were scurrying to make a stand. The Union, vastly outnumbered but better armed with repeating rifles and pistols, started a cavalry charge. After a brief stall, the Union soldiers broke the rebels' lines, and in less than 30 minutes the battle was over, with the Union army defeating their enemy, due in large part to their weaponry and to the quickness of their charge. Defeated, Price fled south with the Union army in pursuit. Knowing he could never escape with the wagon train in tow, Price decided to abandon his loot, burning it so it could be of no use to the Union. Thus unburdened, he found his way back south to Texas, safe and unharmed. There were some Union soldiers which were captured during the Price raid in Missouri, and they were sent to Ford Camp, a Confederate prisoner of war camp in East Texas. This illustration was done by an eyewitness of the soldiers being marched to their POW camp. Even though Price escaped and the loot was destroyed, it was still held as a victory for the Union, as they did manage to rout out the rebels. In addition, the defeat affected the Confederate forces, as annotated in the book Rebel Invasion of Missouri and Kansas, the campaign of the Army of the Border against General Sterling Price in October and November of 1864, states. So completely demoralized were portions of the rebel command that it was found necessary to remove the Missouri cavalry into the interior of Texas to prevent their complete disbandment by desertion and mutiny. After assessing a petition from the Kansas legislature, the U.S. government agreed to pay out damages resulting from the Price raid and the Indian expedition. This was not scrip for the military, but for the public to cover the damages incurred to civilian properties from both the Confederate and the Union armies during the Price raid. Kansas distributed the money to the claimants in banknotes under the title Union Military Scrip. As with all such endeavors, there were some claims of mishandling the disbursement and that some people got more than they were supposed to. But the effect to recompense the civilians over the Price raid damages was beneficial to all who received them. The main vignette shows a cavalry officer talking with blacksmiths, one of which is looking at the officer's saber. One imagines that the soldier would be undoubtedly talking about some action seen during the Civil War. The bottom center image shows a farmer plowing a field with a team of horses under a banner which reads, Ad astra per aspera, the Kansas state motto, meaning, to the stars through adversity, suggesting that great achievements can be made by overcoming struggles. Here's a photo of Topeka, Kansas in 1867, the same city and year that these banknotes were issued. This brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Remember, you can find out more information about this and other banknotes by visiting banknoteden.com.